Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel, and in this video I will be giving you a traveler's guide to Moscow. Okay, so first things first, my name is Ntombi. I lived in Russia for 6 years and now I am back in Zambia. This video is about a traveler's guide to visit in Moscow, Russia. So number one, plan your trip in the summer. If you plan to go to Russia, particularly Moscow, plan to go in the summer because the city is very beautiful, the flowers are blooming, like the plants are green, the parks are fun to go to, and the weather is nice. It's warm in the summer. And by summer I mean July and August. But I think July would be best because August, I mean, it's like then it's transitioning, getting into fall, autumn. So it's best you go in July if you're planning to go to Moscow. The second thing I want to talk about is don't book a hotel, but a hostel. Unless you can afford it, because Moscow is quite expensive. I mean, it's one of it probably is on the list of one of the most expensive cities in the world. And for me, both times that I visited Moscow, I lived in a hostel that felt a lot like home. And you know, we had our own kitchen, the showers were clean, they were being cleaned around the clock, the toilet equally was clean. It was affordable as well. And while I was at the hostel, I ran into a few people who I made friends with, and you know, it just made sense that when you visit in Moscow, you would, especially if you intend to stay for a longer time, you're better off living in a hostel than a hotel, unless you can afford a hotel, because they're very expensive. Okay, so the third thing I want to talk about is use the metro or the buses and even the Uber. But if you're moving on a budget, you're better off going on the metro or even the buses. So like for me, I bought a card that allowed me to just, you know, put money in it and swipe, use this metro, use this bus, and that was easy for me. Like transport like that is very cheap and it's fast, you know, and especially for taxis like Yandex Taxi, it's quite efficient, and they charge you by the kilometers that you're using, not by like the time that you spend with him, with the taxi, that is. In addition, I would also like to add that if you're afraid of getting lost in the city, because Moscow is very big, using the metros, there's an app called Yandex Metro, and this is the one that shows you the paths, the stations that you can get to. Like you can't get lost, honestly. Once you have the app, you really can't get lost. So yeah, use the metro over taxi or buses because they're cheap and they're fast and they're quite efficient. The fourth thing that I want to discuss in this video in the traveler's guide is don't buy fast foods, you know, like McDonald's, because there's like a lot of McDonald's is like nearly everywhere, nearly 500 meters or even one kilometer away there's a fast food store. Now my advice to you is that you should try to eat from the Russian restaurants, because I mean, you know, the food is rich, like Russian food is very rich. A lot of the Russian restaurants I ate from it wasn't very spicy. In fact, it wasn't even spicy. It was very rich and healthy. So I'd advise you to rather eat from the Russian restaurants rather than eat from fast food. And this leads me to point number 5 on Traveler's Guide. This is where, for example, if you live in the hostel, I would encourage you to buy from shops like perekyostok, as well as perekyostok. There's a shop called perekyostok. These shops are quite affordable. I mean, like the locals buy from there. Unless you're rich, you can go to buy like the other shops, but these ones are the ones that are affordable. And you'll find that throughout Russia, the prices are almost the same. It doesn't matter like you're in the capital or you're in another city. Okay, so another point that I want to talk about on Traveler's Guide is, right, so for those people who love coffee, is point number 6. For those people who love coffee, I mean, like there's a lot of coffee places, street coffee places. It's like it's everywhere, and well, there's cheap places as well as expensive places. And for me, I'd advise that you buy, you know, from like the shops like Coffee Mania, and not coffee places like chocoladnista. There's chocoladnista, and those ones are particularly expensive because like they're a brand. Yeah, almost something like Starbucks. But if you really want good coffee, you can get even from just like from the street. There's like a lot of shops around that sell coffee. And now let's talk about the places to visit when you're in Russia, particularly Moscow. When you're in Moscow, so for me, I visited the Kremlin. I was privileged to be in a group of like about 10. There was 10 of us, and we went on an excursion in the Kremlin. And so the lady guide showed us around. Like it's fun to go to the Kremlin when you have a guide on an excursion. So go to the Kremlin, make sure you visit the Kremlin, and while you're there, make sure you go to the Red Square, take pictures on the Red Square, because like you can't say that you've been to Moscow without pictures at the Red Square. Even the Saint Basil Cathedral, you also have to go there. Only one thing that I can give is that with the Red Square, the 2 times that I went there in August, it happened to be closed because there were some parades there the whole month of August. And this is why I was saying, if you want to visit Moscow, make it a point to visit in July, because that's when like the square is open to visitors and tourists. Another place that you would love to visit is the Tretyakosvy gallery, Tretyakosvaya gallery. You might also want to go visit the novodevichy convent. This is like one of the popular holy places in Moscow, and it's like it's a monastery, and it's a rich historical place. Another place that you should make a point to visit when you're in Moscow is the Bolshoy theater. Unfortunately for me, again in August, the 2 times that I visited Russia, 2 times that I visited Moscow, the Bolshoy theater was closed, unfortunately. But I encourage you that if you want to go to Moscow to visit and have a full experience of all these places that I'm mentioning, make sure that you go in July. Another interesting place that you would like to visit is the subways, rather the metros. Like all the metros they have like their own unique story to tell. But Kievskaya metro station is very popular for being just like a rich. It's a national heritage site, so you must make a point to go to Kievsky metro station. And for me, another beautiful metro station that I've been to was Teatralnaya. Teatralnaya station it's beautiful. The lights, and there's this art on the roof. It's beautiful. You really should visit that place. Another place that I would encourage you to visit while you're in Moscow as a tourist is the Moscow planetarium. Oh, I had such an amazing experience there. It's just beautiful. You get into this room and you just it's I don't want to spoil it, but just make a point to visit the Moscow planetarium. So number 8 on my list of a traveler's guide is you should make it a point to visit any one of the huge parks. For example, Sokolniky Park and Gorky Park Gorkovo. I mean, those parks are always packed. There's always an activity. There's always something going on, especially like on weekends. You won't go wrong if you visit those parks. You can't be in Moscow without having that experience. The last point that I want to give in this video, in the traveler's guide, is okay, when you're in Moscow, don't forget to buy a souvenir, particularly a matryoshka. These are the Russian dolls that come in like, like there's like 8, and there's like different sizes. So you keep opening until you get to the last one, and it's like really small. If you're in Moscow or any place in Russia, just make sure you get a matryoshka. Oh, don't forget to take a lot of pictures. I mean, this place, just of the buildings, of the infrastructure, Moscow is such a beautiful place. So we've come to the end of my video. Thank you for watching, and if you're new to this channel, please don't you forget to subscribe. Share this video with anybody who's planning to travel to Moscow or Russia in particular, and give me a thumbs up if you like it. Yeah, thank you.